Spaun Sports Podcast.
Welcome to the All Sports Podcast with me, Matt, and today, Joel. How are you, mate?
Hey, Matt. All good, mate.
Right. Straight into, we're going to cover mainly golf and F1 today. We'll start with the golf, the US Open at Oakmont, the hardest course I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, they're all
And
getting.
I've got an issue. I've got issues with it.
Well, they all were getting in their Nixon just about it, weren't they?
It's more like crazy golf. The undulation of both the fairways with extreme cambers and also the greens, the enormous greens, and actually just it looks from an aerial view like this really big open course where in comparison to Augusta, which is incredibly closed off and manicured. I know Oakmont is incredibly manicured as well, but it was just like this crazy golf course. My biggest issue is that par is supposed to be what is expected elite golfers to be able to hit on that. I don't think, actually, let's just check. I don't think it's even elite golfers.
And like over multiple rounds, you would expect them to knock a couple underneath that. And
Here we go. In golf, par is the predetermined number of strokes that a skilled golfer should ideally need to complete a hole. Now, I would say, and this is my umbrage, is that the players competing at the US Open are beyond skilled. They're at the top of the skill level in the world, and they should be shooting under par. Par around Oakmont is not par. A par 3 that is 300 yards and a difficult green to get to and putt on isn't a par 3. It didn't play as a par 3. So, yeah, that's my issue with it, is I watched incredibly high-skilled, top-of-the-game golfers play bad golf for 4 days, which took the enjoyment away. Some people enjoy watching them scramble around and how they then adjust their game, but it's not the golf I enjoy.
I think if you're there, you can really appreciate that. But watching through the telly, I think that's harder to appreciate that because, like you say, you just want to, and you also want to build up to big moments. And I feel like there weren't that many of those. Like they'd build, a couple of them would build up some momentum. I'm thinking of Tyrrell Hatton and Burns as well, Sam Burns, and then a couple of like really bad holes, and they're out of it. Whereas that means that the margin for error is tiny, and I feel like on a normal round, a couple of bad holes knocks you back, but you're still in it. Whereas at Oakmont, I feel like they were taking themselves out of contention very quickly. I mean, obviously the conditions played a big part in it as well. It was really tough conditions. And is it the toughest track on the tour? I think it probably is, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Certainly in the US PGA, there may be other tours that have difficult courses, and there may be other courses that are championship courses that are incredibly difficult, but this is the hardest that I know of.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned the size of the greens, and for Spaun to put the one in at the end from one side of those greens to the other.
64, credit to him.
Yeah.
He had to 2-putt from 64 feet. It wasn't a done deal.
It was possibly 3 as well, though, wasn't it? 3 might be as well.
3 putts for... Yeah, so 3 putts would have given him a bogey. Yeah, so he'd have still had it. They said basically two putts for the US Open would have had him at even. 3 putts would have pushed him back to +1. Yeah, because he birdied it, didn't he? Yeah, because it went down in 1.
Yeah.
But yeah, JJ Spaun. So after watching him against McElroy at the Players earlier this year and then go to the playoff, he is on form. He's a player that's been on tour now for 10, 12 years and is starting to play better golf, but I wouldn't have ever considered him a contender this week. I thought that the Players was a one-off, but yeah, he's certainly built something from that. I thought at the Players he kind of started to lose his head and his mentality a little bit, and I thought the same was going to happen, but credit to him. He played 2 exceptional rounds. His first round and his third round is were exceptional. In his fourth round, he did what he needed to do with other people falling away. Obviously, he was playing with Sam Burns, who hit a 78, was leading, and then obviously dropped down to 4 over. But I thought Sam Burns, with the way that he had played on the Friday and Saturday, hitting a 65, which is 65 was just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's the lowest score, right?
I think it was, yeah.
Lowest score
there was some
Yeah, so Spaun got 66. Can't see many others. 67 Ortiz.
Yeah, Thurston Lawrence got a 67 on day one as well, the South African.
Yeah, Scott got a 67 as well. I'm Scott. Yeah, I mean, I would say I don't know a lot about Spaun, to be honest, and I don't really feel like he's in contention that often. Like you say, the players he was in and around it. Maybe it helped him that he didn't really put rounds. It's going to sound a bit silly because he put 4. If you average out his 4 rounds, you put these ones together, but he didn't have a really good one and then another really good one, so he wasn't he was never really leading. He wasn't sitting on a lead overnight or anything like that, so I wonder if that helped him a little bit.
Yeah, he actually lost his card. He lost his card in 2021, and then and I think dropped out of the top 500 in world golf.
Oh, wow.
And he's not exactly built back up incredibly since then. So he is. I'd said it actually that we might get another kind of Brian Harman result.
Well, the US Open has a tendency to throw up not random, but unknowns as winners.
Or definitely unexpected, because they're probably fairly well known to the
diehards.
Yeah, probably the diehard, certainly the diehard PGA Tour followers. JJ Spaun will only really have been on people's radar this year from the players. Aside from that, he's missed cuts. He's missed cuts in the majors. Got a 20-something in a major and 50th in a major, but has missed a few cuts as well, and has only played a handful of majors. So yeah, he's not a player that you would have considered in contention going into this week. I thought he'd probably fall away. I thought Scotty could still charge. At any point, I thought Scotty's not out of it. And then with Adam Scott having major pedigree, I thought he was a very good shout. And just the way Victor Hovland plays, and with the green softer due to the rain, I thought he was going to be more attacking, and it just didn't come to fruition. Watching him seemingly hack out of the rough, a ball 30 yards, and then into the bunker to rough, scuffing it out of the rough like he's a 20 handicapper. It's just that's not fun golf for me, watching someone that is at the absolute pinnacle of tour golf.
Yeah. Rob McIntyre, I feel like he enjoys the US Open. Maybe not.
Hey, look, he is going to be one that the US team are going to be watching out for now in the Ryder Cup. He's in the side, and I think he's going to be one of our leading contenders. He's really starting to build up a catalogue of performances, and I don't think it's going to be long before he gets a major.
I thought he'd already won one. Why did I think he'd already won one? He was close in the Open a couple of times, wasn't he? Close in the PGA once as well. I had in my head that he'd won one, but maybe it was one of those Opens that I was thinking about. So yeah, good to see him up there. Good, and look, like I say, Hatton fell away a little bit, but it is good to see him playing some decent golf. But you just worry about him being consistent over the 4 days, isn't it? That's what he finds the hard.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I feel like since the move to Live, he's kind of fallen away a little bit. I feel like he was competitive ahead of that, and then I don't know, he's not really...
Yeah, other than Bryson, I feel like they all have. I don't think Rahm, I feel like it has been most detrimental for.
Yeah, Bryson is not there, is he? How many did he miss the cut by? Yeah, he was 10 over.
McElroy was 10 over at one point as well.
Scrambled though, didn't it? I think what's going on? I feel like there's been a lot of focus on him and his form, but we're only a couple of months after that Masters win, so I feel like that's a bit overblown. There's all this driver stuff going on, which is clearly
But that
impacting.
driver stuff, Scotty Scheffler said, yeah, I've had that too. It's no big deal. I think the problem is Rory's made it a deal. He didn't want it to come out. He didn't want any reasons for his golf to be questioned. He didn't want any attention on that. He just wanted the focus to be on his golf. So any distraction really frazzles him.
Yeah, he was definitely frazzled. Was it Saturday that he did his interview with Sky Sports?
Yes, yeah, because he didn't do the first 2 days. That's interesting. Yeah, let's talk about that. Go on then.
I just thought frazzled is exactly the word, like giving answers, and then somebody eventually asks him about like why he's been skipping the media the last couple of days. They seem to I thought it was interesting that somebody asked the question, feels like you're daring the tour to make it mandatory to speak to the press, and Roy was like, what? No, that's not what I'm doing. I like that I don't have to do that. It's a complete luxury that I wouldn't want to be taken away. So they are they are intimating agendas to his behaviour, which might not be true, which I think is what is going to be annoying, right? They were saying that they kind of analysed the interview on Sky Sports shortly after it, and yeah, there was a fella on there saying, you just don't want to be there sometimes. And Rory said that himself in the interview. He said, I didn't really, I was trying to, it was a bit easier to play well on the back nine because I didn't really care if I made the cut or not. Like staying for another 2 days didn't really feel like something that I wanted to do. And then he ends
All talk about
exactly
the whole world.
Yeah,
it's funny actually. I was saying to you earlier before we recorded about the interview I did with Donny at Carry and with Robin Williams, the European Tour golfer. And one of the things Donny asked was the view on doing interviews and like the media obligation to do that straight after, because the media want to know it's either it was a great performance or it was a terrible performance. They don't want to hear from you if you just shot par. They only want to hear the highlights or the lowlights, and they want the extreme reaction. It's clickbaity.
Mm.
They want something that's going to be good for the viewer to watch, and that isn't necessarily good for the player. And I get why McIlroy doesn't want that.
Mm.
The added pressure, the added stress of it, as many other players feel the same, and we see it in tennis as well. It's the same. You come off and it's like in tennis it kind of is mandatory, or is expected at least. But the only issue I would have with McIlroy's response was, I've earned the right to not do it, and I don't like that, because
I
that's to say that only if you've won majors do you not have to talk to the media, and I think that's wrong. I think part of it is it's a privilege for the viewership to be able to get those first-hand views, but we don't watch the golf for his personality post-game. We watch it for his quality on course.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's an earned thing at all, that you earn the right to not do it. It is just your prerogative.
Yeah.
It's your prerogative, the same as it was JJ Spaun's before he had won a major, for him to talk or not talk to the media. Same as it is for one of the amateur guys that's not won anything on tour and isn't a professional player. They have the prerogative to not talk to the media. It isn't an earned right. And that, I think that probably, two views on it. One, it was almost like he's forced into a corner and he's saying things that he wouldn't normally have said if he'd thought more about a media-trained response. I think it was a little knee-jerk reaction
to the moment. I think he wasn't just talking about the golf he's played as well, though. I think he's also referring to the fact of how vocal he's been and how protective he's been of the tour over the last few years. I don't know if that's wearing on him a little bit as well, like those conversations that he's been involved in the background.
One of the figureheads. The figureheads in the voice pieces for the tour, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's made his bed there now and he's kind of having to lie in it, which means more attention, more scrutiny on his agendas, like I say, and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think he's coming at it from I've won all the majors, so I can do what I want, but also I've given a lot to the tour over the last few years, so not doing these not doing these media interviews post playing feels like a privilege for him that he can kind of exercise whenever he wants.
Yeah, without having to have the scrutiny, and then it be a bigger deal the next time he does it. It's a little bit of a battle that he's going on at the moment, just to work out what structure he has in a tournament that gives him the protected space he needs mentally to perform best, to prepare best, and to perform best in competition. And he's not cracked that formula yet. I'm glad he cracked it for the Masters, but I don't know that. I think it was kind of by accident. I think it was by fluke or skill. He was going to win the Masters at some point, as we all know.
Yeah. I just hope we just need him to get himself right for September, don't we? That's the main thing.
I don't see it being an issue. What I think helps him is having Lowry.
Yeah.
Having Lowry playing good golf, one of his mates. I think, yeah, he gets on great with the European guys. We've got some nice young up-and-comers coming on. Thomas Dietrich's now in contention for a place, and he played well at points over this weekend. Had some good highlight reels, obviously. We spoke about Tizzy Hatton playing some good golf. Matt Fitzpatrick. Was it the US Open? So, yeah, and then we spoke about Bob McIntyre earlier as well. Obviously, Rahm needs to start playing some golf.
Yeah.
We've got the Højgaard twins as well. I feel like the European team has got a lot of potential there to do very, very well against the US team.
Yeah,
I feel like there is just a couple of people whose names start with Sh that are going to carry Team USA in Scheffler and Schauffele.
Yeah, Scheffler and Schauffele are both in good form, aren't they? Koepka had a decent weekend.
He did, and he always pops up. If he's playing well on Live, I don't have a clue, but he always pops up in majors.
Yeah, he likes the US Open as well. So the Open next, Port Rush, is that right?
Yeah, it is indeed. Just a few weeks to go. Interestingly, JJ Spaun's now jumped ahead of Bryson DeChambeau in the Ryder Cup team.
Really?
So you got Scotty.
For a major win there.
I mean, Scotty's already qualified for the Ryder Cup. His points total can't be amassed, but yeah, it's an interesting team they've got. We spoke about Harris English winning earlier this year.
Yes.
Harris English, Mav McNeely. Mav McNeely is the richest player in golf. Through inheritance. Through inheritance rather than prize money, although he's now starting to accumulate some prize money. Ben Griffin, who you'll have seen on the leaderboard a fair amount this weekend. Russell Henley in number 7. Now, he was a lot of people's picks going into this weekend as well. Colin Morikawa playing ridiculously good golf, always just so consistent. Justin Thomas, I feel like, is a bit in and out. And then we know about Bryson, JJ Spaun this weekend, then Schauffele and Scheffler, as we spoke about. So, yeah, their team's a bit of a mixed bag, I think.
There's more names on the European side, it feels like, more like household names.
On to F1 in Montreal in Canada. I actually love it. I love the Canadian Grand Prix. The half track, half road circuit that it is.
Something about it reminds me of Melbourne. Is that right or wrong?
It's fair. It's fair. There's a lot of similarities. What I guess when I was biggest into F1 is when Lewis Hamilton was racing for McLaren and he started dominating the Canadian Grand Prix. And the Canadian Grand Prix, I think, is the one that he's actually won the most. And stand to be corrected on that. And now George Russell is starting to really find some form with the Canadian Grand Prix as well. On pole for the last 2 Canadian Grand Prix and then lost it last year, threw it away last year. He was too tentative driving last year and still got a podium and came around in 3rd. But for him to look very quick, actually both Mercedes sorted out their car. Both Mercedes looked quick in practice. Quick in qualifying. He did. And then both of them did really well. And yeah, I really enjoyed watching Kimi Antonelli race.
There was
all sorts of problems for Verstappen.
Yeah. He was right up him all for the whole race. Basically, didn't give him a second. Just put lots of pressure on from the very start.
Yes.
Verstappen was defending right away, wasn't he? So that set the tone for their race.
Yeah, obviously George Russell, he pretty much led from start to finish, excluding the pits, but a couple of very big talking points. It's the McLaren drivers that have been leading all of the championships so far, and they had it coming together. We'd spoken about it. At some point, they have to clash. Didn't know the clash would be a crash, but certainly thought there's going to be a point in the season where they are racing properly head to head, because it's kind of been when Piastri's been at the front, he's been pulling away, and when he's not been in the mix, it's been Norris at the front, and Piastri's been several places down. It's not always been so processional, close, that they've been able to attack each other. This was the first race where you also heard it over the radio that Lando Norris was getting the encouragement from his engineer to actually attack Piastri, and when and where to do it, and they were building up for it. So they came together at the first opportunity, really, second opportunity that Norris had to have a look at him, and it felt like it was a much bigger picture than what actually happened. What happened was a microcosm for what's actually happening in the driver's standings, because it felt like he took the first opportunity he possibly could to try and get past him, but that wasn't necessarily going to be his best opportunity. He went for it at a corner where there wasn't space. Piastri had stayed on his racing line, so Norris would have had to go inside. He instead thought that Piastri was going to go inside and seal off the corner, but he didn't. He stayed. He hung it out wide, and Norris just waited for the gap and went into the back of him, looking for space on the outside. And it felt like a very rushed mistake, that he wanted to get it done. Like, he didn't know if he was going to get an opportunity, so he had to get it done then and there, and it wasn't measured. And this is the kind of mistake that James and I regularly talk about with Norris, is that there is a level of immaturity there and a mistake that's in him in these F1s, and it cost him dearly. Out of the race, no points. So he lost. So Piastri came round in fourth, and so he's lost 12 points. So it's not like Piastri won and he lost 20. But what they were racing for was the difference of 2 points.
Norris is very fortunate that he didn't cost the team all their points for the day. So I think he can count his lucky stars with that. I mean, everything you've said is true. So to kind of talk through the incident, they're approaching the final corner, right, which is where Norris makes a good move, where there's space to be had, and it's a good manoeuvre. He almost gets in front. Piastri readjusts and shows incredible speed of thought and like car control to get back in front, to like maintain his position and then get back in front down the straight.
The switchback, it's a common thing in overtaking. If someone cuts inside and takes the inside line, they're obviously compromising their speed on the next corner if it switches back the other way. Yeah. So Piastri, I felt like, actually almost let him have it to do the switchback on the next corner.
Yeah, and that's like a big, and I feel like you say, it's a microcosm of the championship between the two of them, but it's also like the microcosm of their driving styles as well. Like, Piastri was able to think a step ahead and able to think, okay, this is fine. He can go past me because I'm going to have a better position going into the next corner, and that's all that matters, really. So he knew he'd have the DRS as well, because he had it from the car. I can't remember who was it, Leclerc in front at that point.
Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah. So he knew that he had that, and he knew he'd be in a great position on the first corner, and that Norris would basically have to pull back, which Norris did not do. Continued to try and attack, even though he'd almost taken his opportunity. And it's like, okay, fair enough. Piastri's put himself back in the best possible position that he can. You've got to just back off at that point and say, fair play, I tried it, didn't quite happen. I'm going to wait for my next opportunity, not keep trying to force it. And hopefully he learns from it. But I mean, we've said it a lot with him, haven't we? Like, there's been tons of these types of examples of him either throwing races away, throwing qualifying away, in really like intense moments where he seems to lose concentration, lose patience, whatever you want to say.
Yeah, it's poor judgment, isn't it?
Yeah. So, yeah, like I say, he's incredibly fortunate that it didn't cost all the team all of their points. He was pretty cut up about it, wasn't he? After the, immediately on the radio, you could tell that he was, oh God, what have I done? And then after the race, he was obviously full of regret in the interviews.
It was, and I think it was the McLaren we talk about a lot, pride themselves on team first. And he spoke to that too, and he knows it, and he knows if he's to be the number one driver or whatever it is, that he needs to promote that team ethos publicly as well. But I think it came across as authentic, and I think it probably was. He knows that there was no way that it was anyone else's mistake but his. It certainly wasn't Piastri's. Probably a little bit with his engineer for pushing him so hard. I've never had an engineer versus your own teammate. He didn't say, remember, bring both cars home, which you regularly hear on team radio. It was just talking about attack.
Yeah.
The whole time.
And they were on
Maybe
it.
that was just what got put out over the broadcast.
But they were on at him even before all of that, because he was a bit slow, wasn't he? To start with, and they were setting in targets, which he was hitting. He was having he was putting
They were coaching him. He's done 138 races.
Yeah.
And they're coaching him around because, like you said earlier, I think he loses his concentration. It's all well and good being at the front of the pack and coasting a little bit or protecting your tyres and taking your foot off the gas a little bit. And if someone starts to close it, then you can turn it back on again and focus. But when you're doing the chasing, you can't let up. You've got to always, time is of the essence, and you have to continually be chipping away. And he needed to be coached to do that. They were having to tell him where he was losing time and like you said, to keep on giving him those targets to go after, those lap times to go after. Like, he wasn't just performing on his own back.
Yeah, it strikes you that he kind of needs that. He needs that kind of short-term target. Like, what's the next thing that I need to hit? Let me focus on that. And, when you're driving at that speed, you need to be thinking about the next thing. You're not thinking about the corner you're in, you think about the next corner. It's exactly the same as the situation that they were in between Piastri and Norris, where Piastri's thinking about the next corner, but Norris is just thinking about that one and just thinking about that point in time there. And it's a similar thing with having to be coached around the lap times and okay, no, you need to be hitting these numbers now. This is going to be important for your race later on.
Exactly.
So yeah, I do like him. Like I said, like you said about his authenticity, I think he does have that, but he's in a really good car, and at the moment, Piastri is looking like a much more considered driver and basically a much more likely champion.
Much more mature. You would think it would be him that had done the 138 Grand Prix. Yeah, it's the gap is obviously not unassailable. It will always be mathematically achievable. It's just how close the gap is actually to Max and George is surprising from Lando. It's 176 to 55. It's only 21 points that he's ahead of Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And no other cars have been anywhere near. I mean, Lando Norris, 8 podiums, 2 wins. Max Verstappen, 5 podiums, 2 wins. Verstappen is obviously the best racer. He's the fastest driver. Whatever they're doing with that car, I don't know. That it's just built specifically for him. But apparently they've turned the corner with that this weekend and started to develop it a little bit more for Yuki. That certainly didn't play out in the race, but that is what I was hearing. But yeah, just to finish off on the McLaren's, it feels like as the season goes on, what we were seeing earlier on in the season, the little bits of mistakes for Norris, perfect Piastri, it's just continuing to play out. And as it does more and more, the gap and the gulf is expanding, and each of those two personas is getting more and more exaggerated the longer it goes on and the more they both keep leaning into it. Like Piastri, so calm, cool, collected, and measured. Norris fast as anything, but lacking focus, and he's got a mistake in him.
Yeah, for sure.
Great segue to driver of the day.
Okay.
Who was driver of the day?
I don't know. Who
Lance
was
Stroll.
Really?
Yeah, home Grand Prix. That can
Oh,
be
okay.
all it was because, gosh, that guy started 17th, finished 17th, but got driver of the day.
Driver of the day.
Lapped in his Aston Martin.
Who
Where was the other Aston
decided-
Martin? Where was the other Aston Martin? 7th. 6 points. Thank goodness they've got Fernando Alonso to pick up points.
He had, I thought he had a decent day, didn't he, Alonso? Not quite driver of the day material, but you know.
Yeah, that's the funny thing. The funny thing about it, yeah. Although Alonso actually started in 6th and finished 7th, so in that regard, in relative terms, Stroll actually did better. Yeah.
I mean, talk about a finish. Like nobody likes to see a race finish under
Under a safety car,
the safety car in the way that it did, but
except for George Russell.
We still got, yeah, he would have very much enjoyed that, but we still got some entertainment from Russell and Verstappen approaching the line.
I think Russell would have been so nervous that they were going to say, yeah, do one lap, like safety car in, and you're going to do one lap.
Yeah.
That would his biggest fear.
Hamilton, Verstappen, 2022, 23, was that?
Yeah, it still feels far too recent.
Yeah. But yeah, the little break from Russell, and then Verstappen overtakes him, and they're both straight on the radio. Like, Max just overtook me under the safety car. And then they're like, yeah, we'll have a look. And then Verstappen's like, George Russell just broke aggressive braking.
Yeah, and he's saying, erratic driving under safety car. Red Bull then raise a complaint. Interestingly, though, if Max had have stayed ahead and he hadn't given the place back, technically, obviously that's not how it transpired, but he'd have got his ban. That would have been the point that he needed to get a ban.
Right. Is he working under like a suspended?
Yeah, he's got 1 point left on his license.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
So George could have really played the game and just parked. He could have just parked the car, and all of the other cars concertina behind him, and Max gets a ban.
Very funny.
Gives everyone a better chance in the next race if he's not racing.
What is the next race? What's next?
Next race, we've got we've got the start of the triple header in Europe again. So we've got the Austrian Grand Prix that starts at the end of the month. So that's from the 27th of June before we go to Silverstone on the 4th of July. It always is traditionally the first weekend of July. And then Spa in Belgium, an amazing circuit before the summer break. And that's 25th of July. So we've got 3 in Europe before the summer break. And then we have 3 in Europe again when we come back at the end of the summer break.
Be interesting to see where we are come that summer break now. I feel like Verstappen it's not going away, is it? And if they think they figured something out with the car this weekend, he can have 3 good weekends before the break. He could be banging it.
Yeah, the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Yeah, I don't know who it favours, but I don't really like it as a track. For nostalgic reasons, I like the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, but I'm not overly keen on the Austrian one. That just about wraps us for today. If you've enjoyed listening along, you can like and subscribe on Spotify and YouTube. You can get in touch on email at
allsportspods@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Thanks.
And we will see you on the next one. Cheers.